Before we dive into today's intense story, a quick reminder, over 90% of our viewers watch our videos but aren't subscribed. If you enjoy content like this, take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And if you find this story gripping, don't forget to like the video. It really helps us out. I don't know exactly when everything started to fall apart, or maybe, deep down, I do know. I just didn't want to see it. It's strange looking back. You think love is this unshakable thing when you first fall into it. You believe it can survive anything, especially when you've promised forever. But forever starts to stretch thin when lies settle into the corners of your home and you don't even realize it until the walls start cracking. My name is Rachel. I'm 38 years old. I've been married to my husband Dean for 14 years. We met at a mutual friend's wedding. He was the best man and I was the maid of honor. I know, it sounds like the setup to a cheesy romantic movie, but in real life, those perfect moments are more like snapshots. They're not the whole story. Still, I fell for him quickly. He was charming, funny in that easy, natural way, and he made me feel like I was the only person in the room when he looked at me. We got married a year later. Our early years together were beautiful. We lived in a small house we could barely afford, worked long hours, and laughed through cheap dinners. We built something real, or at least I thought we did. I stayed by his side through job changes, his father's death, and the miscarriage that nearly broke me in half. We eventually had 2 children, Grace and Ethan. They're 10 and 7 now. They're the light in my world, the only reason I stayed steady. When everything else started to tilt, I guess the first crack appeared when Dean got his promotion about 2 years ago. He started working longer hours, traveling more. I was proud of him, truly. He worked hard. I wanted to support him, but then the calls became fewer, the texts less personal. He used to tell me everything, what annoyed him at work, what he ate for lunch, the funny thing a coworker said. That all stopped. I told myself it was just stress. I believed it because I needed to. Then came Ava. She was new at his office. I heard her name in passing at first. He mentioned her once during dinner, said she was young and bright. Fresh out of grad school. I thought nothing of it. I mean, what could possibly be threatening about a fresh-faced assistant? But her name started coming up more, in little ways. He'd mentioned something funny she said, or how sharp she was. One day I made a joke about how much he talked about her. He just laughed it off and said, "She's like a kid. Don't be silly." I smiled. Then, but something cold settled in my stomach. It wasn't long after that when he stopped coming home on time. Client dinners. He'd say, networking. I believed him. Again. Or I pretended to. It's hard to admit when the person you trust most starts becoming a stranger. I'd try to talk to him, asked if everything was okay. If he was feeling burned out, he'd brush it off. Tell me I was overthinking things. That's the thing about gaslighting. It doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's just quiet enough to make you doubt your own intuition. One night, I found a receipt in his coat pocket. It was from a hotel downtown. When I knew he didn't have meetings in, when I asked him, he said he'd used the lobby for a last-minute business discussion with a client who was passing through. The lie was too casual, too easy. That's when I started to pay attention. I didn't go full-blown private investigator right away. I still wanted to believe in him. But I started keeping track of his calendar, his tone, the gaps in his stories. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed to be sure. So I waited and watched. Then came the day I'll never forget. It was a Thursday. He was supposed to be out of town for a seminar. But I got a call from Ethan's school that he had a fever and needed to be picked up. I wasn't home. I'd taken my mom to a doctor's appointment across town. I tried calling Dean to see if he could get Ethan, knowing full well he was supposedly hours away. He answered on the second ring. He sounded distracted. I asked where he was. He hesitated, said he was heading into a breakout session. I didn't let on that I knew he was lying. I hung up and drove straight home. Just on instinct. Something was pulling at me, harder than ever before. I don't know what I expected. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But when I pulled into our driveway, his car was there, parked casually like it always was. My hands were shaking as I stepped out of the car. I didn't rush inside. I took a deep breath, walked in slowly. And there she was. Avenue. Sitting on my living room couch, barefoot, laughing at something on her phone. Dean came around the corner a second later, holding two glasses of wine. He froze when he saw me, so did she. The silence was suffocating. No one moved for a full 10 seconds. Then he said my name like it was a question. Rachel. That was the moment everything shattered. He didn't try to explain, not really. He didn't fall to his knees or beg forgiveness like in the movies. He just stood there, guilt smeared across his face like a child caught stealing. She tried to leave quietly, avoiding eye contact. I didn't stop her. I couldn't even speak. My voice had abandoned me. After she left, he started with the excuses. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far. She means nothing. Each word made my skin crawl. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I listened. Then I walked upstairs, packed a bag, and drove to my sister's place. I didn't cry until I was in her guest bedroom with the door shut. It was the kind of crying that didn't make noise. Just pain leaking out because it had nowhere else to go. The days that followed were blurry. He texted, called, even showed up once, but I didn't respond. I needed space to think, to feel, to breathe. I wasn't sure what I wanted. The betrayal sat like poison in my chest. But what hurt the most wasn't Eva. It wasn't even the affair itself. It was that he looked me in the eyes and lied for months. That he made me feel crazy for suspecting anything. That he let me carry the weight of our family while he played house with someone new. I saw a lawyer quietly, just to understand my options. He told me not to make any big decisions while I was emotional. But I was past emotion. I was calculating because this wasn't going to be the story of a woman who got broken and faded away. No. This was going to be the story of a woman who rebuilt herself, who took the ashes and made something stronger. I wasn't going to just walk away. I was going to make sure he felt the full weight of what he'd done, not just to me, but to our children, to our life, to the woman who loved him more than she loved herself. That was the beginning. The beginning of my revenge. After I left Dean, I stayed at my sister's house for 2 weeks. Jenna never asked for details, not at first. She knew me well enough to know I'd talk when I was ready. She made space for me. Gave me silence when I needed it, and support when I didn't know I needed it. That kind of quiet love. That's what held me together in those early days when everything inside me was either rage or sadness. I knew I couldn't stay there forever, though. I had to face reality eventually. I had kids, a house, a job. I couldn't let my stall out while Dean kept moving like nothing happened. He was still trying to fix things. Or at least pretend he was. He sent long emails and texts that read like monologues from a man who still thought he deserved to be heard. He admitted to the affair, but only after being caught. He never confessed voluntarily. That stuck with me. I made a mistake. He wrote in one message, I want to be a better man. For you, for the kids, please come home so we can talk. Remember, I wasn't coming back. I didn't want to talk. What I wanted was justice. Not just legally, but emotionally, spiritually. I wanted him to feel humiliated. I wanted him to taste the same kind of shame he'd served me. But I didn't want to destroy him in a way that would hurt our children. That was my boundary, my line in the sand. Everything I planned had to keep Grace and Ethan safe. They were innocent. And I would never use them as pawns in something they didn't cause. So I started slowly. The first thing I did was visit a therapist. Not for him, for me. I needed to talk, to process everything. The therapist, a woman named Carla, helped me understand something critical. Revenge wouldn't heal me, but it could empower me if I used it wisely. That changed my perspective. I didn't want to be petty. I wanted to be deliberate. I moved back into the house 3 weeks later. Without Dean, he had started staying with a coworker after I left. I told him I wanted to return for the kids' sake, to stabilize their routines. He didn't fight me. He thought I was softening. He had no idea I was setting the stage. It was awkward at first, being back in the same home that now carried the stench of betrayal. Every room felt tainted, but I scrubbed it clean, physically and emotionally. I rearranged the furniture. I painted the dining room wall a new color. I took down the family portraits with his face in them, and replaced them with pictures of just me and the kids. It wasn't petty. It was therapy. Dean didn't protest. I think part of him still believed I'd eventually come around, that I'd cry in his arms one night and say I missed him. He underestimated the depth of what he'd done to me. I started collecting information. I learned more about Ava than she probably knew about herself. Her social media was public. She posted everything: coffee dates, conference selfies, motivational quotes. Her life was a curated highlight reel, and Dean featured heavily in it now. I knew he told me she meant nothing, but the pictures told another story. I saw them together at the beach, at a friend's barbecue, even holding hands at a restaurant. He once took me to for our anniversary. He wasn't sorry. He was just sorry he got caught. So I got smart. I created a private email under a fake name, something generic like Emily Harper. Then I set up social media accounts to match, using that persona. I befriended Ava online. It was disturbingly easy. I just commented on a few of her posts, flattered her style, and asked harmless questions about her skincare routine. She followed back within 2 days. Ava thrived on attention. Through our friendship, I learned everything. The office gossip, her dreams of starting a fashion blog, her frustrations with Dean not moving in with her yet. Apparently, she thought I was the one clinging on. She had no idea I was 2 steps ahead of both of them. With that in mind, I contacted Dean's HR department anonymously. I didn't accuse him of the affair yet. I simply asked what the company's policy was on the relationships between supervisors and subordinates. Turns out they had a zero-tolerance clause. Romantic relationships were considered conflicts of interest, especially when promotions and bonuses were involved. Interesting. I sat with that information for a week, then I made an appointment with a divorce lawyer. I didn't tell Dean. I let him believe things were calming down. I even started being civil, smiling during kid pickups, responding to his emails with polite, cold replies that made him relax. I wanted that. I needed him comfortable because he made his biggest mistakes when he felt safe. My lawyer, Melanie, was sharp and precise. She went through our finances with a fine-toothed comb. That's when we discovered something else. Dean had pulled $6,000 from our joint account 2 months earlier. He claimed it was for a client expense. The timing, however, matched perfectly with a weekend trip he and Ava took to Miami. He had used our savings to fund his affair. That was the final push I needed. I printed out screenshots of Ava's posts, receipts I'd found, bank statements, everything. Then I sent a carefully worded email to his HR department, not as Emily Harper, but as myself. I attached the documentation, didn't exaggerate, and asked for confidentiality. I didn't want him fired. I wanted a formal inquiry, something to shake his world just enough to rattle his sense of control. 2 days later, Dean called me in a panic. What did you do? He barked over the phone. I stayed calm. I don't know what you mean. Or pulled me into a meeting. They said someone filed a report. Sounds serious, I said. He paused. Rachel, was it you? Maybe you should ask Ava. You two are so open with each other. Click. He didn't call back. I found out later that Ava was transferred to another department, and Dean received a formal reprimand that would prevent him from being eligible for a bonus this quarter. That hit his ego hard. He always loved being the golden boy. Now, he was just another employee with a blemish on his record. But I wasn't done. We were in the middle of divorce proceedings by then. I told Melanie I wanted full custody, not to punish Dean, but because he was unstable. His affair had bled into every part of our lives, and he hadn't even tried to shield the children from it. Grace told me she once saw Ava in our kitchen, laughing with Dean while I was away. That was unforgivable. The final move came a month later. Ava posted a picture of herself crying, vague caption about heartbreak and betrayal. She'd found out, somehow, that Dean had been texting another woman, not me, someone else entirely. Turns out, serial cheaters don't stop just because you believe you're special. I didn't say a word. I just watched it unfold. Dean tried to explain. He sent me one last email. I never meant to hurt you. I was lost. You were always the strong one. I see that now. I didn't reply. He was right about one thing. I was the strong one, and I wasn't done yet. I never replied to Dean's last email. By then, I had said everything I needed to say, not with words, but with action, with silence, with the way I reclaimed myself, piece by piece. While he unraveled, there was something satisfying, almost poetic, about watching him scramble for the stability he had once taken for granted. And he didn't even realize that the storm he was caught in had been building all along. One choice, one lie, one betrayal at a time. I had warned him in my own quiet way. I had told him who I was, not by screaming or crying, but by standing back and letting the truth catch up to him. It always does, eventually. When the divorce was finalized, I didn't cry. I wore a dark blue dress, heels that made me feel taller than I was, and a small silver necklace Grace had picked out for me. My lawyer told me it was one of the cleanest splits she'd seen in months. Melanie was brilliant, calm, relentless, and professional. She negotiated terms that made it very clear Dean wouldn't get to walk away clean. I got full physical custody of the kids. He got alternate weekends, supervised at first, then conditional on attending co-parenting therapy. I kept the house, he kept his debts. We sold the second car, split the retirement accounts, and I made sure the agreement included a clause. No overnight guests of a romantic nature around the children for 1 full year. That made Ava a non-option. Not that it mattered. She was long gone by then. Apparently, she left the company and moved to another state. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. It was never about her. Not really. It was always about him and me. In the months that followed, my life didn't suddenly transform into a fairy tale. I still had to get up early, make school lunches, go to work, fix the leaky faucet. But I was doing it all on my own terms now. Every day I spent away from Dean felt like a quiet victory. Every moment with my children, unburdened by his lies, was a kind of healing I didn't know I needed. And as I rebuilt my life, I started to realize that the best revenge wasn't just watching him fall. It was rising without him. But I wasn't quite finished. There was one more thing I needed to do, not out of pettiness, but out of principle. I wanted to make sure no other woman found herself in my shoes because of him. That's when I started writing. It began as a journal, something my therapist had recommended, but it turned into a blog. I didn't use names. I didn't point fingers. I just told the truth from my perspective about what it's like to love someone who betrays you and what it takes to rise again. I called it What I Learned from Her Shoes on My Floor. It spread faster than I ever imagined. I started getting messages from women across the country, some who had gone through similar experiences, some who were still stuck in them. A few even recognized the behavior of their partners in the stories I shared. One message stood out. It was from a woman who worked in the same industry as Dean. She didn't know me personally, but she said my blog gave her the courage to walk away from a toxic relationship. She had been silenced, manipulated, told she was crazy, and she read my story and realized she wasn't alone. She thanked me for helping her find her voice. That was the moment I let go of anger. Not because Dean didn't deserve it, but because I didn't want to carry it anymore. It had done its job. It had fueled my strength, sharpened my instincts, pushed me to protect myself and my kids. But I didn't need it forever. One evening, months after the divorce, I saw Dean again at Grace's school recital. He was sitting 3 rows ahead of me, alone. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. He still wore the same clothes, same smug expression, but there was something hollow in his eyes. Something defeated. After the recital, he approached me outside. "Hi, Rachel." "Dean." He looked nervous, like he wasn't sure how to speak to me anymore. "You look good," he said awkwardly. I nodded. "Thanks. I saw the blog. Someone forwarded it to me. I know it's about me, even if you didn't use names." I didn't answer. He rubbed the back of his neck. I wanted to say I'm sorry, really, I mean it this time. I believed him. I think for once he actually meant it. But it didn't matter anymore. "You should say that to yourself," I replied. "I already forgave you." He looked surprised. "You did?" "Yeah, because holding on to what you did, letting it define me, that would have been the real tragedy." He didn't know how to respond to that, and I didn't need to. I walked away before he could say anything else, not out of disrespect, but because I didn't owe him a conversation. Closure for me wasn't in his hands, it was in mine. The next few years were full of quiet triumphs. I got a promotion at work, Grace made the honor roll, Ethan started playing soccer. I learned how to install a ceiling fan, fix a broken toilet, and grill salmon without overcooking it. I took a weekend trip with friends to a cabin in the mountains and laughed until I cried. I didn't think about Dean once while I was there. Eventually, I met someone new, not someone flashy or dramatic, just kind, steady, patient. I took things slow, very slow, because I needed to be sure, but when I introduced him to the kids, Grace looked at me and whispered, "Mom, he makes you smile with your eyes." That was all I needed to hear. Dean still tries, every now and then, to insert himself into our lives. He sends longer emails around holidays, overly sentimental messages about memories from years ago. I don't block him, but I rarely respond. I don't want war, I want distance, peace. He once asked me, "Do you still hate me?" I told him no, because I don't respect him either, and that matters more. Looking back now, I don't regret how it all unfolded, not the pain, not the rage, not even the revenge, because every piece of it taught me something about who I am, about what I deserve, about how far I'll go to protect my own dignity. I was never the weak one. I was the storm he never saw coming.